to mixing then, Matt, do you tend to go with on your drum groups and guitar groups? Do you go for a kick group, snare group, overall drum group, or?
You talking about for parallels or
No, summing?
Summing. Okay, summing. I have an interesting approach to summing. That's it's pretty basic and it's generally pretty musical. I do mostly just a drum, bass, rhythm guitar, lead guitar, keys, vocal effects, vocals.
Right.
Those will be my stereo pairs. There'll be other summing and other parallel compression, all kinds of shit going on in the thing, but they come out of masters into an analog mixer that way. Yeah. And then out of there's another analog stereo bus chain that involves certain type of compression and EQ and stuff. But that's my thing. And there's other guys that there's other approaches out there that are really cool, other parallels and different things, and some guys do the kick snare thing, but I typically do it that way, and I deal with all those balances that you're talking about, like the kick and stuff. I deal with all those balances in the box.
When you're using drum samples, do you tend to just use a single kick sample or maybe two, and same with snare?
I typically use, it could be a lot. I mean, it could be anywhere from 1 to 4 of each. 4 snare drums, 4 kicks. It could be 1 kick. It can be typically. If I'm going to say typically it's two kicks and 4 snares.
Right.
And the toms, the way I told you, where the toms are the toms from the record.
But you only ever reinforce the natural drums, or do you do a little bit of replacement ever?
I never do replacement unless there's some kind of problems come up in the process. It's 90% reinforcement, and I'm more, everything we're talking about. It's ludicrous to say I'm a purist because I'm doing all this like stuff, but I lean more towards I want to record really good drum sounds, and my samples are there to create frequency reinforcement underneath. Like, I don't never want to hear my samples that much. I don't want to hear them distinctly.
What is your approach to gating? Either waveform edits on the toms to completely remove the bleed, or do you gate the toms, and same with the kick and snare?
It varies. And the philosophy's changed a lot, and it varies from project to project. But I will say that I do it with volume rides. I usually will, depending on the type of project, I'll leave some of it. It can be anywhere from minus 12 to minus 22, where it's almost completely, or beyond, where I'm talking about the floor of what between that and what I decide to be the peak of the tom. And the same thing comes into play with snare gating and kick gating. You have to gate those too, but usually I use some kind of expander or gate like right on the channel,
Right. So do you actually completely gate out all the bleed?
Pretty much, with like snares and kicks. The sound of the instrument, other instruments off axis through that mic after it's had that kind of processing on it is so unattractive that it's better to just get rid of it completely.
Do you ever compress rhythm guitars?
Yes. I think they ultimately, almost in all my mixes, in the end, get some amount of compression, but more as a group coming out of the final stereo fader.
Yeah.
One of the things that happens is all my stuff, like I explained to you before, comes out different in groups, and pretty much all of them has some kind of processing strapped over it at the end, some kind of graphic EQ and some kind of compressor. How much compression depends on what I'm trying to achieve.
Do you tend to have the guitars hard left and right?
They're not hard left and right typically. They're about, my overheads usually are outside of my guitars by a little bit. My guitars are in the 90 range. If you were in Pro Tools, they'd be in the 90-ish range.
With the overheads fully wide?
And the overheads are fully wide.
Do you tend to EQ the guitars on the channels or collectively on the group, on the sum?
I do both. They always get. They typically get both. They're definitely going to get it at the group.
Do you use a lot of series compression on the bass, sort of like on the channel and on the sum? Or?
Yeah, the bass typically gets, again, there are multiple instruments. Some get compressed on their channel, but the whole thing at the end gets a like a LA2 type of treatment at the very end when it's all mixed together.
Particularly on the faster albums, for example, Atlas, how many reverbs would you use across the whole mix?
There's at least 3 or 4 different kinds of reverbs just used on the drums alone. You know, there's certain like non-linear and short things that are used for the snare, and then there's longer room things that are just with time-based effects. It's really interesting how much there can be in there.
Do you tend to mix with a compressor over the master bus?
I have a limiter and a compressor over my master bus, but the limiter doesn't actually even ever kick in. It's just for tone.
Matt, thank you very much indeed for your time.
All right,
Absolutely
my pleasure.
Fantastic.